Greetings, knobs, grots and other assorted fungus, and welcome to Codex Compliant, the series where we take a look at the various codices, magazines and general stuff put out by Games Workshop over the years.
So far we've looked at things that were both Imperial and from 3rd edition, so today let's look at something that's neither. Orks, 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 orks. The Orks are the most savage and warlike race in the whole galaxy. Their huge empire is divided among thousands of warlords. The Orks live for war and are constantly striving to defeat their neighbours, whether they are human, Eldar, or even other Orks.
This is the very first Codex Orks, released in 1994 during 40k's 2nd edition, a time when squats were still around and every unit had its own movement value. Wait, we've got both those back now, haven't we? Huh. So yes, Orks, the warlike race of green fungal football hooligans with wonky tech, although they aren't quite the same in here as what we know now. For one, their spore-based reproductive cycle is nowhere to be found, but then neither is their old asexual marsupial one from Rogue Trader. Actually, very little of Orc sex lives are featured in this book, and you know what, I am very disappointed.
Once you've gotten over that major omission, what you'll likely notice is how much Imperial stuff they can use in this codex. Though they had some of their own weapons, like the shock attack gun, the Orks in here mostly used bolters, power swords, plasma guns, etc., all things we generally associate with the human factions in the game. You could also take Ogrins as troops. The Orks would simply hire them as mercenaries, and the Ogrins are fine as they find Orks, quote, very amusing company. Hell, you could even just straight up take Imperial Guard or Space Marine tanks if you had any Blood Axe mobs in your army. All you had to do was make sure that they were manned by Orks and had an appropriate colour scheme.
And speaking of colour schemes, this book was made before Gorka Morka came out and firmly cemented the Mad Max but green ramshackle orc aesthetic we all know and love. So the orcs in here are far more bright, colourful and, for want of a better term, clean looking than you may be used to. This stands out in particular when you read the description for the Goth clan, who are stated to prefer wearing black and think any orcs wearing bright colours are not proper orcs. A description that perfectly lines up with how they're painted nowadays, but not so well with the Goths shown in this book that are covered in bright red, although to be fair, most of the others are way more vibrant too, so I guess it's all relative. It was a fairly vibrant time for the franchise. I mean, just look at the covers, I am not used to this many bright colours in my 40k.
Yeah, whilst we're on the subject of aesthetics, the Storm Boys, they looked a bit more... yeah... Moving swiftly on, let's take a look at some of the other playable units. Obviously we have boys mobs, but how they worked is quite interesting. Each mob of Orc boys is bought as a specific clan. They start off more or less the same, but which clan they are affects how they can be upgraded. So a Bad Moons mob can have more heavy weapons, an Evil Suns mob can be upgraded to be on bikes, and a Goth mob can be upgraded into the stronger Scar boys. There's also Snakebite mobs that are able to ride war boars, which I think we can all agree is a good thing.
Now there was a reason to all this, apart from just for fluff's sake, since what mobs you had affected what other units you could take. As mentioned earlier, you needed to have at least one Blood Axe mob in order to use Imperial tanks, but likewise you needed a Snakebite mob in order to have more than one Runt Herd, or an Evil Suns mob to have more than one Mechaniac? Mech.
Most of the rest of the units in here are what you'd expect, but there's a few interesting ones, like Mad Boys. Deranged Orcs whose genetic memory has gone a bit wrong and as such are randomly assigned a different irrational psychological trait each turn, like being fearful or stupid or voting Brexit or whatever. There's also squid catapults that are exactly what they sound like and hurl buckets of small angry buzzer squigs at your enemies. Snotlings were actually playable too, although they had several models per base, kind of like a Ripper Swarm, and whose primary use seems to be as ammo for the shock attack gun.
Rather annoyingly though, vehicle entries in 2nd edition didn't have all the stats you needed to actually play them. You'd need these data cards which would contain all the other additional info you needed to actually use them on the tabletop. Sometimes these did appear in some of the other codices, but the rest of them had to be acquired by other means, such as buying this huge ass box.
As you would expect, there are entries for special characters in here too, some familiar and some not so. From the present day roster we have Captain Badruck, Mad Doc Grotzneck, and of course Gazkul Mag Uruk Thraka. Although, like all orcs, he looked quite a bit different back then. He's small. There's also a couple who would appear in later editions but aren't playable now, those being Naz, Dreg, Ug, Erd, Grib. The Mega Armoured Bad Moon's Warlord, who was last playable in the 3rd edition Codex, and Wazdaka Guts mech, the bike-riding Evil Sons mech, last playable in the 4th edition Codex.
Finally, there are 2 playable characters that would not see a Codex again after this, in a playable form anyway, those being Zodgrod and Makari. Zodgrod Wartsnagger was a snakebite runtmaster who was able to breed special, more powerful versions of Gretchen and Snotlings, and was banished from his tribe after sending a mech through their own shock attack gun. Makari, on the other hand, was Gazkul's standard-bearing Grot, who was so unnaturally lucky that it was represented in-game by him having a 2+ saving throw, which is never modified for any reason. Sadly, it didn't save him, as we learned in later publications that Gazkul sat on him, spelling the end for the poor little Grot.
Other fun little tidbits from in here are Ork Mega Armor having a medical squig built in so you get an additional 4+ saving throw, Stormboy's jump packs being so badly made they can misfire, resulting in either the Ork blowing up, going off target, or just sailing over the horizon as the jump pack refuses to shut down. And a rather neat 2-page story in which a weird boy uses his powers to spy on a fight between Imperial forces and some other Orks. It ends up with the weird boy's mind and a Titan Princeps mind mingling. It's an interesting idea and quite a long story for a Codex. Also, you get to hear how an Ork responds to the chance to fight some space wolves.
Here they come. Mork's droppings, look at those wolf pelts. Gonna get one of those. Right lads, fire at will. Wahoo eat this Humi, see how your zogging emperor likes it.
Oh, true poetry. Oh, and another short story on page 30 says that Grot blood is green. Just thought we'd mention it, since the colour of green-skinned blood is something that GW has never really been particularly consistent about, so this is just for those keeping score.
There is one other thing worth mentioning in here that was standard for 2nd edition codices, and that's the catalogue in the back. It shows the models in the range, the individual parts, and even showing some basic assembly instructions, which can actually be oddly helpful if you happen to buy any unboxed models from the era. Plus, it's just really interesting to see some of the old models broken down like this. Also, you get war gear cards and some templates that are explicitly in here for you to photocopy, which is nice.
All in all, this is a pretty nice codex to pick up, even now. It sits in an interesting place, right between Rogue Trader and its mountains of Ork lore, and what Orks would later become in a post-Gorka Morka 40k.
So, if you're looking to pick up some of the older 40k books, then we can definitely recommend this one, and not just because I happen to play Orks and I'm very biased.
It's just because you happen to play Orks and are very biased, isn't it?
Okay, maybe a little, but it's still good, honest.